We had a number of topics that we were hoping to discuss and present to you, and wanted really to take this opportunity to reach across the street and
The parking lot.
reach across the parking lot and see each other face to face, and some of the things that we work on together and could work on together, and just an opportunity to hear what we're working on and hear about what's top issues for this group.
I thought maybe we'd start with introductions. I think it's been the first time in quite a while there's probably been a joint meeting, at least with this council and the school board. So we've done a couple of these sort of. We've done the fire district board. We'll have one with the Sisters Park Integration District as well. And as the mayor said, it's really an opportunity to share information, updates, opportunities for collaboration and cross communication on major issues and projects that we're working on. And so we've identified a couple of those to update you all on. And then I'm sure council and the board have topics to discuss and have a conversation about. So we really left a lot of time on the agenda for just open dialogue and question and answer. So I'm Jordan Wheeler, I'm the city manager. Been here about almost 2 years, about a year and a half, closing on 2 years.
Hello, I'm Scott Woodford. I'm the Community Development Director for the City of Sisters.
I'm Sarah Kugel, pretty fresh counselor, but happy to be here.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Jennifer Lance, I'm the mayor. This is my 5th year on council.
Michael Breeden, City Council. Gary Ross, City Council, my 5th year on council, and this will be my official 241st school board meeting. I work in education for attended at least 240 for 20 years, 12 years.
I'm Cheryl Pellerin, Councilor Pellerin, and this is my first year on council.
Welcome.
So,
Yeah.
Kurt Schultz, Sisters School District Superintendent. It's my 10th year, and I think this is our second collective work session. The first one was with the University Working, and I presented development work 3 years ago.
I'm Edie Jones. This is the end of my 4th year, and I was appointed just before that with them. So it's coming to the end of this term, after 4 years on the school board.
I'm Jeff Smith. I'm sure I've been to more than 240 board meetings. Started on the school board in 1999. Century.
Yeah.
You attended the school board. You attended the school board.
I did invent school board. Old retired college professor. So good to be here.
All right, my name is Eric Benton. I am. Ooh, that's lady. I'm the newest member of the Sisters School Board. I was appointed back in January after the vacancy in the position by David Dorset. And I am up for election for school board this month. And I'm looking forward to continue to contribute and participate in this great along with these great participants.
Excellent. Glad to see you around.
Lisa?
Hi, I'm Asa Sarver, School Board Chair. Can everyone hear me? I wasn't sure if that's working.
You can hear you great.
And I think this is my second, or working on my 3rd year here at the school board. Can you guys see? It's hard to tell if you guys can hear me, sorry.
We can hear you fine.
Okay, great. And thanks for inviting us.
Yeah, thank you for all your making it happen, and I don't see you done it yet, so.
Yeah, so this first topic, start an update. Scott will provide a brief update on where we're at with the urban growth boundary expansion project. I know at the staff level, we've had a lot of conversations with Kurt and Scott and staff about the land needs for the school district. But we thought just to bring you up to speed on where we're at today with that process and what's ahead of us too.
Thanks, Lonnie.
Excited to be talking to you guys about the project. We've been underway for about a year now on this. The planning for this has actually gone on for about 5 years previous to that, so it's not a new thing. We've done a lot of studies, a lot of work to identify what the need is, and we have a pretty solid handle on that. We're thinking that we're going to need about 250 acres of expanded river area. That for those who may not be totally clear on what the river boundary is, it's just basically a line on the map, a line in the sand, and divides between where urban uses and rural uses are permitted. So when property is brought into the urban growth boundary, it doesn't necessarily mean it's automatically brought into the city. It's just brought into the urban growth boundary, which gives those properties the opportunity to petition the city to annex. So the first part of the process was kind of finalizing what the land need is and what types of land uses we would need to meet the future growth needs. And it's all based on population projections that we use from Oregon State University that in about 20 years out. And those numbers indicate that Sisters would basically double the population to about 7,100 people in 2043. And those are the numbers that we base. Those are the numbers we base all of our planning off of. And so a portion of those needed, a portion of that population we can accommodate with some of the vacant land we still have in the community. But as we look around, we'll know that we're getting close to building out that area. So we can only accommodate a portion of that population. Existing gardens, that means the rest has to be accommodated via an expanded boundary. And of that 250 acres, about 160 acres or so is intended to be residential. But we also have identified a need for employment land to be built along with that. So that as we grow as a community, we have all the needs a functioning community requires to prosper. Employment lands, we're identified about 53 acres of land for that. Employment, when I say employment lands, I'm talking about, includes light industrial, service, commercial, retail, all those things. We also, as part of our Parks Master Plan update that we did recently, identified a need for about 19 acres of new parks to keep pace with that residential growth. And then in conversations we had with the superintendent, this about a year and a half ago, where we talked to those other organizations in the community that might need land as well to accommodate future growth. And that's when we identified the 15 acres. Potentially at the end of that 20-year period, there would be a potential need for a new elementary school. And this is what the superintendent to verify that's still the case. But those are the numbers and the acres that we built into this planning process. So once you identify how much land you need, then the question becomes where do you expand to? And as part of that process, we study basically every property within a half-mile radius of the existing city boundary, and that forms your study area. And then we prioritize the different lands within those areas because there's higher priority land that the state of Oregon requires us to look at first to bring in, and then they're always on priority 4 lands. So priority 1 lands, thank you for going forward. If you want to look at the screen here, this map right here, you can see in the middle, the kind of the lighter gray area in the middle is the existing city boundary. And then there's a half-mile radius. And once it goes a little farther than a half mile to the north, those are what we call exception lands. Exception lands are lands that haven't been committed, they're not committed to farm and forest uses, basically. And those are the lands that the state says we need to look at expanding the use first, because the ultimate goal of the state's growth management plan is to preserve farm and forest lands as much as we can. Not to say that we couldn't go in those areas, but they're lower priority. So that green area is kind of the higher priority lands, and then we have the other kind of orange lands. Okay. Our land zone EFU, which is exclusive farm use. So those are lower priority lands, and then we have those areas in town that are either owned by the U.S. Forest Service or privately owned zone forest land. And those are the lower priority areas. And this little box on the lower right is the 250 acres. It's just a box to give you a scale, a sense of how big that is relative to the overall area. So they went through this process thinking that we have enough area in the green to satisfy that 250 acres. And so we've been proceeding along with the planning process. We have a steering committee that's made up of citizens as well as property owners in the study area to help advise the council on this process. And I think if we go forward, it goes into this is the criteria that we're required to use in analyzing which animal will do that. That's kind of the criteria we have to use. So it's designed to be an objective process versus a subject, and it's not a popularity contest. It's really which lands meet those criteria the best. So go ahead and go forward. And through this process, we those areas that are in color there are part of that priority wetlands that we've identified. So for this to orient you, you can see like in the middle, there's the kind of cross hatch there goes in this general direction. That's the airport, and kind of includes the runway as well as airport influence area, the runway protection zone. Those are areas that we kind of restrict development within for the safety of the airport. You can see the other crosshatch area kind of going north to south is the line of Indian Ford Creek and the wetlands, and there's no map floodplain associated with that, but kind of the right area for that. It's kind of orient you. We have the steering committee and the planning commission and council look at all those areas up in there, and we kind of since honed in on concept one more or less, which is the area kind of marked there, and that's one of the areas that we've kind of focused our search for a preferred alternative, and that's what we're trying to get to, is a preferred alternative that we can pay forward through the process, get it adopted by the state, and that's your I can skip on to the next one. One thing also under consideration as we go through this process, or it came up during this process, was the property owners that own the 58 acres outlined in red, that's north of Mackenzie Meadows, privately owned. It's zoned forest too, so it's private forest, which is a lower priority. But they have since we started this process, submitted a rezone to the county to go from forest to mixed use agriculture, which if successful would put their lands in the more priority one status. And so the council's kind of decided that we would kind of see how that rezone goes. We're checking back in May. They just had a hearing on it yesterday. I don't know if the decision was yet, but so these properties, I think the reason why the council and the steering committee wanted to have these properties considered is that they do rate and score very well on our analysis. The fact that it's undeveloped, has water, sewer, and roads are stuck in the property. It's close to the existing schools, so there's some benefits there. So we don't know if it's going to be something we can consider or not. It's all kind of contingent upon whether we can do something to pretty low there. So what we're doing is going to go forward with a plan A and plan B. One that includes this property and one that doesn't. And so that's kind of where we're at with it. As I mentioned, we identified 15 acres for a school. We don't know exactly where the expanded area is going to be. We don't know what's in those areas yet where the school site would be, but that would be part of some further funding exercises that we would do after we define where the boundary is. And we would work with, obviously, with the school board and superintendent to kind of identify where those areas would be best for future school uses. So I'm just going to stop there and see what kind of questions you guys have.
I can handle it. in the process of looking at growth, the numbers proposed by Portland State, actually, even at the time we started that process, by the time we were done with it 2 years later, they had re-upped their calibration of needed homes quite extensively. So instead of like, I can't remember the exact number, it was 200 more units, which would have an impact on the system, school system specifically. With those numbers, I think I reflected with you guys that we're probably good with current property growth for a good 10, maybe 15 years. If those numbers hit, we wouldn't be able to support the 19 to 2,100 students that would be in the system with the current facilities without growth, depending on where it hit. So we can grow to probably 15 to 1,700 kids fairly comfortably on our current campus. We get above that, it starts to be more of a challenge. And so that'll just all depend on how quickly we actually grow. We saw for the first time this year an actually slight reduction in students. And I would say that continues to be the issue of affordable housing. I know that's a priority as we look at the UGB and, attending the last meeting, having people that are committed to looking at affordable housing is a priority. We're working with Rooted Homes to try to, we've awarded one home already. The board approved us working with them to do two. We couldn't award the second one because we couldn't afford, even with the buy down to get the mortgage down, our staff couldn't afford it. We're working with them again to try to look at a triplex in the process to maybe do that because it's a little less expensive, but workforce housing is a big issue and it's really one of our key issues. And again, on the other side of the UGB, we're in support because growth for schools is a good thing. Give us a little more diversity, a little more resources. We are at a number where if we grew, we really are pretty comfortable we can afford some growth and be more efficient in our resource use. Right now, we're maxed out, about the lowest we can be with what we're serving. We'll probably have to reduce if we go down, but growth gives us more opportunity. So that's just a perspective on where we are from the school district's perspective on that.
I've been in Poland for like 10 years now. Just looking at the city's, growth of what was the census in 2010, 38 something. Just curious, like we've seen the demographics get a little older.
So we were at 1106 my first year, and we dropped in the first 2 years to 1080, and then we were at 1085 or 1185 last year. So we grew 105 students over the last 6 years, and actually this is the first year in 6 years that after Christmas break we tend to grow by 20 to 30 kids, and this is the first year that so it's interesting. I'm not sure. I haven't analyzed, had time to do any like deeper analyzation. Is that what's the rate of building? What's the slowdown? Is there a slowdown? What's happening? I would say just from what I'm hearing, it's more about prices. Knowing with other folks that are losing some families, some of the families that Circle of Friends supports, they've left because they just can't afford to live. And so, so that's at least the very rudimentary.
I want to make you aware that Jenica Cogdill has joined the meeting.
Any other questions or discussion around the urban growth boundary? So next steps, plenty more to come. Some of you may have seen this presentation a few times already.
I just kind of want to make a little comment in light of what you said. 35-year educator. You know what kindergarten numbers mean when we get to the high school level? My father was a school superintendent, so I spent 20 years living that at home. And saw many schools close because you couldn't maintain the numbers. You guys have done a great job given all that's going on. But I will tell you, my position as a counselor is that I'm not interested in bringing land into the city unless we have land to build houses on that people can afford to live here and work here. Because if we can't keep children in our schools, the town dies up and it goes away. I mean, that's what occurs. And so it's in the best interest of this group as well as the citizens of the volunteer group, to ensure that we have a supply of land that can be built on, that will allow people with young children to move into our district and live and be a part of your school system.
I wouldn't mind saying real quick, the city's committed to affordable housing as well.
Yes.
We have about 70 units that'll be online in the next 2 years. I think there's 70 or so. Thanks to Habitat and what's housing alternatives partners in that. So help is coming. We don't know how much it'll help, but it'll be better than none.
Can you explain, very easily, or simply the size of the district, like where it starts and stops, and, you know, we just worry about our 2 square miles here, but.
Yeah, so if you were to pull up that map, we're honestly, so with this end of town, we have the 1.5 acres across the parking lot. And then with the land for the roundabout, I think we're down to about 10 acres with the elementary school property. We are a rather large landowner, however, because a few years back we had the Nature Conservancy who wanted to unload from Wildhaven, and so the history of that property runs deep in the Sisters community. So we stepped up and said that'd be great, and we have worked with the Conservancy to look at how can we maybe develop an outdoor school and environmental exploration programming out on that 160-acre property. So we are now the owners of that property with the Conservancy language that's intact, with some plans to be able to use it for educational purposes and some development envelopes. We also are the caretakers of Truck Creek Conservancy area, which is under the Deschutes Land Trust, so that's right behind the high school. We do a lot of place-based learning in that. One of the things we're going to start doing is working with the Forest Service and the federal or Oregon Department to look at some fire recommendations, working with our students to understand fire mitigation, because it's been 15, 20 years since the last time that's been thinned. So we want to be good stewards around that property as well. And then basically that last little pie at the end where McKinney Butte runs through is all school district property, where the high school, the elementary school, and the middle school. Now we're on the side, yeah, right in there. And then it flags down that other, wide area where the middle school is. So that's all district property as well. We are partners with 2 acres out in Cloverdale that we purchased in 1972 from Redmond School District. It's actually got a rider on the title that says it can only be used for educational purposes. So Heart of Oregon actually runs a program out of that, but we are partners with they're not a accredited school district, so we verify all the credits the kids learn. So it's really a work kind of program with school on top of that kids attend. So we are the accrediting agent for Heart of Oregon, so we've had a long relationship with them. Actually, since I got here, we've had a relationship with Heart of Oregon, so and we're excited for them. They're actually they're moving through their capital campaign to open a new campus in Redmond, it looks like in a year or two, so that's exciting for them. So I think that's the breadth of the property the district owns.
Your boundaries go all the way to, you get students from
Jefferson County, yes. Yeah, we go, the tax space, we also have Black Butte School, which also goes into Jefferson County. So some of the kids that are in that catchment, I think the last I talked to Dana, they had like 17 to 20 kids actually in their feeder system. So Black Butte School District, but we reach out in that area into Jefferson County. I think we have 4 or 5 registered voters in Jefferson County. And then Black Butte Ranch, and then past right about Gist and across that way. So we actually go into Bend zip codes. But we also, the state has a pretty liberal open enrollment policy. So we have kids that their parents work at Sisters, so they come to Sisters. We have kids that just come to Sisters because their families want to come to Sisters. So we have kids from all over the
Yeah, and so another topic we want to provide an update on is actually on the agenda tonight. A component, a large component, and that's wildfire resiliency. Obviously, it's been a priority for the city council and the city for many years, being a fire-prone and fire-adapted area. So tonight is an ordinance for the defensible space standards. What that means is these are the protections that the new development would put into place for new structures, new subdivisions, new neighborhoods that would have to have, no flammable materials within 5 feet of a building. Significant trees, could be retained, but have to be away from the building, spaced out 10 feet from each other within a 30-foot ring of the structure. So, really, it's, the key points is this is for new development. So again, talking about the UGB expansion areas and some of the developed parcels within the city limits currently, and really just to make our city more wildfire resilient with the best practices that are out there today. The other component is building hardening standards. So this is, the best practices for structures and what's required in terms of roofing and siding and ventilation to make sure the actual structure is resilient and hardened as possible against wildfire. And so the city's pursuing adopting the R327 of the Oregon Residential Specialty Code, and blah, blah, blah. It's basically the wildfire resiliency code for the Oregon Building Code. So any new development, once this code is adopted, would have to use those materials and those practices. One thing you may have heard in the news is a lot of angst over the wildfire hazard maps. And this has been an issue here in town. For public comment about this, the state is moving towards repealing that hazard map, and so that sort of issue, the contentious issue, and sort of the failure to kind of come up with a plan to implement that across the state will be repealed. But some of the things like the defensible space standards and the R327 building hardening codes will remain intact for local governments to be able to adopt them. And so that's what we're proceeding with. And then something you'll notice being right across the street, we've already started a project here to make this building a demonstration for those defensible space standards. So you may have noticed a few trees have been removed from the property, and we've done a lot of limbing up of some of the other significant trees on this the property. But we're going to be pursuing a larger project that will be a demonstration for defensible space. So having no flammable materials within 5 feet of the buildings, replacing the bark, putting rock, and doing further vegetation management, taking out the turf. So another thing that we can do here is be a steward of water, which we're in the high desert. We want to conserve water, and this is an opportunity to kind of demonstrate how we can have a landscape that is both fire resilient but also water conservation. So you'll notice some changes probably occurring over the next year on this property that people will be able to come and say, oh, hey, I can plant this in my property that's fire resistant, or here's how I can still have trees on my property but be in compliance with defensible space. So anybody want to add to? Right. Any questions? You don't have to worry about any of this stuff now, probably, but in the future, if you do build an elementary school, although it is residential codes that we're talking about.
So I guess I think that my biggest question is, have you guys resolved when there appears to be somewhat of a conflict with substantial trees and proximity to buildings and the tree city USA statute and standard? Have you guys found resolution, or is it case by case? Is that just gonna?
Well, the code will allow for, if you stick around here tonight, the code does allow for exceptions. Part of any new development that is over, it's a subdivision over a certain size will require a fire prevention and control plan developed with Oregon Fire Code officials. So there is opportunity to demonstrate that there's maybe some exceptions if there's a tree within a certain space, like a building is hardened or it's concrete or something like that. But also, this council has had an interest in preserving significant trees. It's a part of our tonight. We're declaring Arbor Day. Proclaiming Arbor Day or Tree City. So anything over 8-inch DBH is a significant tree, and there's an opportunity to preserve those trees in a defensible space plan, as long as they're limbed up and spaced appropriately and away from chimneys and things like that. Also keep in mind, this is for new development, and a lot of the new development will occur in places that don't have a lot of trees. Yeah, that we're talking about future landscaping and what trees would be allowed to be planted where on new development.
Yeah, it's a big issue for all of us. We need to be very protective of the community, obviously the people who live here, but also we know that we are the infrastructure for this whole corner of the county. And where if there is some sort of emergency, where the water, where the power, where the communication, where the facilities, obviously the school district has been host many a fire camp over the years. It's been a few years, surprisingly, but yeah, but yeah, we realize, watching city after city go through this tragedy, that it's so critical to be able to protect our infrastructure as much as possible, and that very much includes schools. Communities that have lost schools struggle very hard to come back. If there's nowhere for the kids to go, then families don't come back, and then you're not getting the money back in their community. So this is a very high priority for us to try to at least protect. Obviously, people outside the city are concerned about them as well, and fire district also with fire mitigation, but we just realize we are the hub for this entire corner of the county, and we're not only working for the 3,800 people in this city, but we know that we also serve 10,000 plus more people.
So one other update, we touched on some of the housing projects and things that council's working on with affordable housing grants, workforce housing as well. It's a strong interest of ours, and I'm sure we'll have time and talk a little bit more about what maybe the school district has more plans on that. But one of the things that we also partner with is the other property across the street, the other street, and the new community center. So excited to see that, and the partnership between the school district and SPRD to be able to make that happen for our community, to have a community recreation center and a new community park, which we also have parks, but having our recreation district have some land for programming and stuff is excellent. And so one of the issues that have come up is the leasing of that property, right, and filling the space in the old elementary school for other uses. And so we have been working to work towards a text amendment to the PFI zone to provide for some more uses to accommodate things like treehouse therapies, and they gave a presentation to the city council last month. And so that'll be coming back to the council to make a change, an ordinance to make a change to the code to allow for that type of use. So I know you're the landlord over there now, but I'd like to see those amenities for our families too.
Yeah, and I would like to go on the record and acknowledge and thank the city for the work. It's mental health in Central Oregon, treehouse therapies has a 400, they serve 0 to 18-year-olds, and they have a 400 client waiting list. So they're looking for space to serve kids and families. And again, for us, it felt like it felt right into that community need when we started chatting with them about it, and Jennifer about possible partnership as well. So appreciate that you guys responsiveness and work on that as well. So excited and hope it can produce.
Yeah, appreciate your understanding on this process that we have to go through, which wish we could wave a wand, but
Thank you for your patience.
So those are our topics, and if council has others we want me to touch on, that's great. But really wanted to leave a lot of time for Q&A, and also just hear some updates from the council. I know of particular concern or interest, I should say, is you've been working with perhaps getting real estate brokers and stuff, and looking at the future of the administration building, which relocating administration to the campus. So being a neighbor, and it's a prominent building in our downtown. There's some interest there, and hearing where you're at with that process and the steps there. And
And so, the board directed me at the last meeting to start the process. So for us, anything that we would pay a fee over $25,000, we need to get 3 bids, right? We don't have to do a full RFI because it won't be over that amount, but we at least need to get bids. So I engaged about a half a dozen realtors that I knew that in the community for a long time, hoping to get 3 bids. We're in the process of getting those, intend to schedule a work session with the board probably after our budget hearing, which is next Wednesday, a week from now, to look at those and make a decision on next steps on that. I've also had some other agencies, not just the realtors, but people who have heard that we're just, we said in the public session, that we're looking at that, have come forward, expressed some interest, and we're having some dialogue. So we are, it is on the historic registry, so it does, I want to say limit it, you have to follow the requirements for restoration if you do any remodeling updates, right? So those protocols need to be followed, which people do that all the time with historic buildings, so it's not the first. And then, depending on what the possible use might be, I would doubt it would be, having had this conversation with other partners who want to use space on the district-owned properties. We recognize that zone public, it's a very limited threshold of usage, so most likely would be looking at a rezoning process once we make that decision or the board makes that decision. So yeah, a lot to come on that. Speaking about Park and Rec, we're excited about that partnership. I think the board has some good work to do with the current property we have and looking at growth. And so, a couple of our conversations are if since they're there, if we move into the Coalfield, that frees that up for sale, which we're exploring. Then the question is, if it goes swimmingly well with Park and Rec, do we look at that 15 acres in UGB and look at maybe if Park and Rec wants to move forward that property in a different manner? So I think there's some really, exciting times for the partnerships in the community and how they can function. I think as we move forward. So yeah, it's been a lot of good stuff and good growth. I can say. Again, thanks to our entire community, the opening of the elementary school and the services happening there have been fantastic. We've learned stuff, and if you move into a new building, you'll learn stuff, but we've had a lot of great community events in there as well, kind of showcasing the facility, had a lot of positive feedback. The movement of our kids on one campus now, where our high school kids and middle school kids can actually help on other campuses has been a fantastic advantage in that move. So we're excited about where we are and really excited about some of the discussions we get to have. A lot different than some other districts that, we have our challenges, don't get me wrong. So we have our challenges as well. But we have some other exciting conversations along the way as a partner in the community.
Mm-hmm. As we, what can I think of the words? The alterations in the Kennedy Road help with traffic and safety since the school is open.
I think so. I think actually that last, what do we call them, tabletop crosswalk? I don't know what we refer to them as. I think that last one will help. We are looking at completing the sidewalk around the parking lot in the stadium so that potentially if people cross there, they wouldn't have to cross again with the traffic coming through that parking lot. They could walk behind the stadium. The walkway would be all the way connected to the fence line into the school. So we hope that would, now that we are have finalized most of the projects and realize where we are, we think that's probably one of our last projects with the end of the bond funds. So we're hoping to look at that work this summer, and greenhouse is going up. We purchased it. We've got some great community volunteers that are helping us with putting it up, and they've started that. So some of the projects we were concerned about with the inflationary trends in construction are coming back on the table, and we think that we'll finalize some of those projects, and year 2 should be even better.
Did I read 45 new windows or something you wrote?
54 new.
54 on the building.
Yeah. So they either, so two things happened. One, either in the construction, they didn't clean them, right? And so there was dirt in between the double panes, so there was stuff in between the double pane windows. And then secondly, when we had, as part of the process was the sealing of the bricks, well, they oversprayed, and when they went to clean the windows, they actually scratched the windows when they were trying to scrape that sealant off of them. And so, again, not on us.
Warranty work.
Yeah, they had gone through and,
They built 4 schools.
54.
I just want to encourage you when you're looking at the property next door, to think about potentially splitting that property into the piece with the building and the other piece. I think from my perspective as a council, it's a lot easier to look at a zoning change on vacant land than it is on land with a historic building. It means a lot to the community. And we've already been run through the ringer over the Conklin House up the road, which was in very sad shape. And we had a kind of title to do that one. So, given its prominent location on the roundabout and coming into town, and the fact that it is a signature building for many people, I have a very strong interest in seeing it retained and preserved regardless of what was in there. And so that would be something I would want to know more about before I would consider what type of zoning change I would look to support. Just kind of, I want to give you a heads up and be honest with you about that. We're hanging on it.
And you did find like official designation, because I know that was kind of up in the air on the.
Yeah, I've got some. We don't have the fence anyways. So, I've been in contact with the Oregon Historical Society. It's actually on the National Registry. So yes, it is registered from what I understand. And again, it doesn't undo a change of use. It just limits the amount of remodeling and has to follow the protocol from the era, right? So I think every McMillan's is a historic building, right? I mean, it's so it doesn't limit, to use that as an example, it doesn't limit a change in use. It just means the work that happens has to follow a certain standard and their guidelines. So and that is good advice, because it is like 1.56 acres over there. So there's a bit of not just the building, there's some land. So that would be a way to approach. Like I said, we have some good conversations to have as a board as we move forward with looking at those assets.
Questions, thoughts on that topic in particular? Another recent presentation to council was the Sisters Trail Alliance. I think they're proposing, we had a student as part of that presentation. So is that taking shape a little bit more, that trail along the schools there, connecting up to 242 and then back around? I'm trying to figure out.
So currently, I saw their master, what they would like to see as a plan. What we've said, go ahead, is we have some interest in a trail on the elementary school property to start there and move to the middle school. So that's what we control right now. Going the other direction would be a different conversation. It would be looking at the interface with the frisbee golf range, and then also it wrapped into the DCCA, which is a whole other discussion. So what we gave approval is, especially with our kind of school-based move from place-based hands-on learning, is to have them work with one of our elementary school science teachers to work on that with our folks and start there and then expand from there.
Could be done in conjunction. It sounds like you're starting to develop plans on fire mitigation work on that conservation area. Yeah, there's probably a little higher bar to kind of plan that out. How do you, especially with the species flower on there and but isn't there a trail, like a connector trail that kind of runs?
Yeah, there's several trails back there, and even though the Deschutes County Land Trust guidance, for example, there's several things we probably need to look at, because when it was taken by the district or gifted to the district, it talked about no motorized bikes, well, technically probably the e-bikes that are Class C, which are not disruptive, technically are motorized, right? So there's some probably work that needs to be done with the Shoes County Land Trust to look at that language, the whole language of the TCCA, and make sure we're being the appropriate stewards. And to that degree, you can also enforce really when you're there. I mean, when you're on it, I've run motorcycles, cars, we've cleaned up camps, we've had a variety of things that have happened that we've found. We had to have a car towed out of there. So we've had a whole variety of information where they've accessed the current working property of the school district that connects past our irrigation pond. They just drive right through into the TCCA. So yeah, in 10 years, it's been an interesting discovery. And as well as some great, we get presentations from our biology classes each year when they do their hands-on research and someone off there. It's fantastic field study area. It's been great for us. So yeah, we're going to continue to look at that. And that was my explanation. It's not, we can like a trail going in there, but it's got to align with the conservancy language.
About that trail, the trail to Tollgate is not an official trail, but let's face it, many of the kids that live in Tollgate, and there's quite a few of them, just use that trail daily because it's just a straight shot, right? So I just want to make sure that in itself is okay, as long as they're not destroying anything along the trail, right, on that land.
Yeah, and that trail, working with the Trails Alliance, who actually did the work on it, they did the bentonite mix, so it actually is firm enough and meets the ADA requirements for access. So absolutely, and it's okay to ride a bike on it, right, and walk on it on the trail. Not everywhere. And I have 3 dogs, and a lot of people don't also realize that TCA is a leash required area. And so we see a lot of unleashed dogs in the TCCA as well. Most people do adhere to the trails when there are several established trails throughout the TCCA, and most people are on a trail, not just wandering through the middle. So it is I think there is a good observance, and I would agree that's probably the highest traffic is from Tollgate to the high school schools.
Questions and topics?
So I appreciate you mentioning your partnership with Rooted Homes. Just curious as to whether you're still kind of throwing around the idea of building some housing on school land. Long term.
I think long term, our vision would be, we actually have a building construction class, right? And I think there'd be opportunity to look at that partnership and do some hands-on learning with their own kids with property. And I know there's some allotments in the code that would allow for that as well. I did meet with Clayton from Northwest Housing Alternatives as well about what they're doing and how they meet those needs, and looking at not just affordable, but also workforce housing. So we've been trying to explore every avenue along those. Part of the pause on the actual construction side is quite honestly just the cost of materials right now, right? I mean, that's a big investment. And I think the board would need, we need much more discussion along those lines before we want to do something of that nature and look at what it was. It was really interesting and informative when University of Oregon did their study with that property in partnership with the city and some other areas. We gave some great ideas of how those interface could happen, how you could actually put some housing on the outskirts of the park, right? And so there's some great ideas, and we're just, we knew those would be long-term conversations.
But I mean, we're really talking in instructor retention, really what we're looking at there. I mean, keeping quality staff to move to other areas because they can make the same amount of money or maybe a little, but they can afford to live. When you have to drive 20, 30 miles one way to go to your job, it's like a big decrease in salary. So wish you luck on that one. I think it's a smart move. We are going to be able to fix as a city council all of the workforce housing issues, but we are definitely going to try real hard. This is going to take partnerships and I think also open thinking by other groups and agencies as to ways that they can do something that benefits, even if it benefits that particular group, i.e. your teachers. That takes stress and off some other parts of the community that might be able to house someone who's working Forest Service or RODA or one of our other agencies, or for the city for that. We have city employees who ride the buses for them every day. So.
And for us, our real challenge, we've got a scattergram with our instructional staff. And right now, I think actually last year, so I shouldn't comment on this year's demographics yet, but last year we had the #1 teacher longevity in the state of 16 plus years. And so that's great. It is great. But those folks are at the top of the salary schedule and can maybe afford to live, or we're here before the prices really escalated. It's really when we have that turnover and we have retirements that filling those positions becomes more challenging.
Especially when you're adding programs, like some of your CPE programs and stuff like that. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I can get to things like that. That it's those tend to be your lower tenure teachers and therefore lower on the pay scale.
Well, I know we still have a number of issues. We did an analysis part of the roundup roll up to the UGB process to see if there was anything we could do within our code or see existing lands to get more housing in the city. A lot of recommendations in there. We got some of them, and we're hoping to get more in our next fiscal year. One of them was allowing dormitories or SRO or just different terminology, but that is obviously something we talked a little bit about. That futuring, that could be something, an asset for the school district to have an on-site dorm for school year use, summer use, for kids from unstable houses or foreign exchange students or just kids who want to take advantage of sisters programs. They don't have their school district commute. So I know that it's on our council goals to do list for the next look at those options again. And yeah, right now we really don't have the zoning for that.
I got a couple things. I hear a lot from people who disc golf, and they tell me that they really want you guys to continue your partnership with SBRD and keep that course open. Hole 13 is super long, it's about 800 feet. It's on the back side where there's a lot of timber and piles and things. And I was just wondering, is that still going to be maintained back there to keep that part of the course open, or will the course have to be changed down the road depending on your plans?
I think that's yet to be seen. I would say, as much as we value our partnerships, making sure we can staff our system is going to be our priority. So I think there are some challenges with the disc golf being there, and really it's district property, but it's really overseen by Park and Rec, and we'll be there. One of the stories I tell is I'm involved. My kids are now grown, but I was a little league coach as well, and so it was a little bit concerning when you're getting ready to coach a game and 4 people smoking and drinking beverages that shouldn't be on the course come walking up to the hole that's right on the little league field. And so I think just regulation. So as the superintendent of schools, I was very concerned and had a meeting with Park and Rec the next day. So I think it's just how do we control the misuse? We want to be a good partner. Ultimately, if we've got to choose between supporting our system for staffing, we'll have to make that choice. We're not there yet, but could be down the road. And it may be that it's modified. I wouldn't support having it go away. I believe we have to modify it with putting in the transportation center, which needed to be moved and improved under the 2015 bond. So So I think there's ways to work. It may not be the same, it may be different, but I think there's still ways to be partners.
Yeah, regarding the misuse, I think that disc golfers are naturally somewhat independent. But at the same time, they're pretty loyal to the sport. And I think that we could just in the disc golf arena, just get the word out a little bit that, hey, don't forget this is next to a school, and we don't need the vaping, smoking, the beer. I have seen people do it. I've been out there before myself. So thanks for those comments. I have a 14-year-old who's a freshman in high school, and she started the middle of first grade in January of 2016, I think. And so she's been going through the school system, and I get reports on some of the things that happen. We have a great school district, obviously, but there's always room to improve. And the areas that are concerning to her and some of her friends are bullying is still a big deal. And I know you guys that's one of those continuously worked on issues. I think the pressures of society today are greater than they've ever been with social media and phones and things like that. So I just, appeal to you to keep working on that. One specific issue that also might involve the school resource officer is vaping in the bathrooms. I think at the high school level, I think that's happening fairly regularly, and there may be an opportunity to take a look at that. It's happening between periods in the bathrooms, and then apparently they tend to like to congregate in the ADA stall in groups of 5 to 8, and so there's a little report there, and then there has been some concern about some racially discriminatory language by some of the young men. I assume from rap music, but I don't know. Usually the N-word is spoken amongst them and to each other, not necessarily at a specific group of people, but I did want to say that I've been told that is heard fairly regularly in high school. So I'm not accusing anybody of anything, but I did want to make you aware of what some students talk about and hear many times a week. I would say it's pretty common. So there you go.
And I would encourage, I will pass along with them to also pass them along.
Yeah.
We're aware we have people that make circulations in bathrooms. Can't put cameras in the bathrooms. Right? So we're aware of some of the issues and are constantly working on them. And there are challenges around that, but part of it is sometimes people assume that, oh, they must know all these things are happening. And sometimes unless folks come and let us know that they're happening, I know that some things are subtle, and people might assume that everyone heard it when not everyone heard it, right? So I think it's we have people who, when they know of it, they tackle it and resolve it and work with families and kids to resolve those issues. So I'll leave it at that. I would agree. I think another issue that's coming up that is interesting is the state right now is looking at a statewide cell phone ban in schools, which a lot of people, we've heard locally in the community as an issue as well. And I can tell you, I'm in schools every day, in classrooms. It's not an issue. It's not an issue in classrooms where people know that we have in a high school minute teacher use calculator caddies where the kids put their phones in, right? And I will also say, even though we're one-to-one, those are also tools. Kids I have my entire calendar on here, right? I have everything on here that I need to keep myself organized. It's right. It's a computer. And so I agree, screen time can be problematic. And if kids get on, and a lot of the bullying, harassment issues that happen are over social media, and if they're on during the school day, that needs to be addressed if there's nexus to the school day. But there's also some, kids aren't sitting on their phones for 2 hours at school. That's not what the screenager stuff, that the concerns about screen time and overusage. I can tell you, I'm in all of our schools, almost daily in classrooms, and that's not happening there. And my concern is that we often are seen as the solve for things that people see are societal issues. And it creates sometimes more problems than it actually solves in the process. So the unintended consequences of those kind of legislation, we want to be partners with parents, right? We have, those are issues, and in the legislation that's being proposed, if it's on an IEP, because some kids are anxious or need to, there might be emergencies in families, and so we're gonna have exceptions to it. It's gonna be unmanageable anyway. It's just, those are the things that, from a school's perspective, that it is a challenge, and we always value the partner. If people are getting information, reach out to your school teacher, principal, whoever, to let them know we can help partner in resolving those issues.
Well, I will say one thing on cell phone bans. I've been down that road, and the biggest group that's going to be the most inflamed and the angriest will be the parents. Because having been through the school shooting, I know what goes on. Parents think they're going to be able to get hold of the child after something happens. Cell phones will continue down along those lines. But parents think that is the lifeline to their child. And I understand that. Not going to go out of the school is a concern for me. And I would just say that will be where most of you just, well, the kids will be unhappy. They'll try to figure out reasons around it. But it'll be the parents who are going to be your biggest barrier, I think, success with that.
Just to be clear, I wasn't asking for a cell phone ban. I was just letting people know that that's an external, device that leads these kids to some of these situations when they're not really thinking, to be honest. And I think that, I think it's beyond, it's on all of us to help mitigate that in any way we can. But I wasn't calling for that. That's for sure. I know you were commenting on that, but yeah.
I was just commenting because there's actually legislation right now working through the House that would put that actual topic, that it would be a K-12 ban, which is an interesting dynamic in regards of being technology forward and move. I mean, since they've come out, I've always seen them as they should never be a distraction. And if they are, that's a management issue for our classroom, right? And they're a tool, so they can be used really well in an educational environment. So it's about that process and that partnership with families.
You need to talk to Disney about cell phone blockers on the cruise ships.
Yeah.
We've
Block the whole school.
been talking quite a bit this month about wildfire preparedness and a few events going on in town. Can you just brief us a bit on evacuation plans at the school levels or in school hours if something was to happen? How does that work?
So we work with Deschutes County.
Just leave it on. Okay.
Yeah.
So we work with Deschutes County Sheriff. I mean, really for us, fire is smallish. We have evacuation plans going out into open areas for safety, right? That's one thing. But really, more so is risk of threat, where we would evacuate to a location for reunification. Right? And we don't talk about that a lot because telling people where you're going to relocate to doesn't make a lot of sense in an emergency. So we have those plans as well. I don't know. We were required to have monthly drills in every building, from earthquake to fire to other safety requirements. We follow those. As part of our Division 22 reports that we have to file with the state and show a lot that we're doing it. So we stay active with those protocols. We have fire marshal in our buildings a lot, doing inspections, making sure that we're not creating hazardous areas, egress, access are clear, all that stuff. So, I think in 2015 in that bond, we did some tree removal around the properties just for better access. Some danger trees that when we got into them were probably going to fall. A couple did fall on buildings but didn't damage them. So we did some work thinning some of the trees around the property as well. I think we're in a pretty good position now, compared to where I still have some concerns around, I would say the back of the elementary school property is a pretty thick stand of junipers back behind there that I think, in one conversation, they were described as wildlife habitat, which is not something in a playground that the school district is really interested in maintaining, is wildlife habitat. I think in most areas though, we're in a good position. Minus probably that one spot that I think we might still want to do something. And that could be with the future development and use of that property based on the partnership partner.
And I'll say it's a good question because it made me think as a parent and in the system, when there's like a snow delay, for instance, I get a text, a phone call, an email. My husband gets a text, a phone call, an email. It's very thorough and it gets everybody's attention. And with the question coming up a lot, especially with Shutes County, and there'll be kind of a topic this weekend at the fire forum on Sunday, is that ability to capture everybody. And if there is an emergency, they have the Shutes alerts, and it's like, well, that's great, but if you have to sign up for it, and if you're visiting, you're not really captured. And there's all these holes in the system, and yet the school district can find you anywhere and tell you something that you need to know in a moment's notice, which is really great. So there could be something to learn from that system. Obviously, you have this captured audience, right? People who have to sign up and
we need everyone to give us information for registration, so we have, we verify the data typically each year, so that we know that we can get a hold of folks, and we send. If we don't, come the winter time, when we think we might be like, hey, reminder, we need to make sure we can. You want to be informed about what's happening. Make sure your information is up to date. So typically that happens, and it just works through our parent support system that we are able to enact those. It's part of our student information system, and how we can, I want to say, relatively easily now send a pretty mass notification out to our families.
Just so you know, when there's kids in that high school, if they're targeting to a class within 20 minutes. And that's a very good system, by the way. And I don't mind getting over communicated. It's better than under.
Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah. And I'll say that the city is embarking on its second Civic Leadership Academy. And one thing is that we have a high school student who is a member, who helps run it. So we're excited about that, to have that participation. And also the theme will be youth engagement. So, and youth in our town can span from 0 to 50, but really trying to engage younger people and younger adults in our community at all levels of government and community. So we're really excited for that to kick off next week and glad to have some high school participation in that.
On that same note, I've said, you've heard me say at council, and I've said for Jordan that I think it might be nice at some point in time to explore the option of having a high school student who wishes to sit as a non-voting member of the city council, if you have someone who's with the city government and government in general, to want to give that kind of time. I know that's hard with school work, that's it. Keep that in the back of your mind.
We have
that elsewhere. It can be quite effective.
We have no problem asking. We have a rep on the board as well, and they make it. Because they are also a student athlete. Their schedules, it's about half, I think, our meetings, is what they're able to make.
And we meet at the same time, so but just keep that in mind, that that's something that at least I've been pushing for, and I think that I've heard public is interested. It's just a question of how we make that happen.
Well, there's not more conversation. One is actually two comments. One, a thank you for the use of the elementary school, which has been a great asset, not just for the schools, but for the entire community. We've had some excellent public meetings there. We have a couple more coming up. So we appreciate the access the public can have to that facility, auditorium, conversation about houselessness there. We have our UGB open house there. So a great facility. And then just to touch back on the prior issue, the admin building, anything that we can do, to work with you, help, answer questions. If you are pursuing a rezone, obviously it's going to be a process and application and all that, but anything that we can do beforehand to help answer questions and just stay in communication about that would be helpful for both of us.
Or if you want to sell it for $1, the city would.
We'll take that, yeah.
That's our position.
I do $2 if you're pushing.
If you're gonna double it, $2, we can do that.
If you have any questions for us, we've been talking at you, obviously, is there any thoughts or concerns about how we can be a good neighbor? And, Asa and Jennifer want to chime in as well, just at any time.
I think I'm pretty dialed in with a lot of community meetings, whether it's the houselessness or whether it's the bid group. I think I'm pretty dialed into a lot of those partnerships. And I would just say, thanks. I know that if it's good for the community, the conversation is usually met with open ear to say, okay, it's not a no, it's a how. We can't do it under where we are now. Maybe there's a different solution. So I always appreciate the partnership and recognize those things as organization and policy that policy doesn't matter and you got to follow it. So I've appreciated the conversation and the partnerships, at least in the work I'm doing.
And I'd just like to thank you for having this meeting. Oftentimes I think, the school board, we feel like just an entity by ourselves, and that we know that whatever is happening with the school district affects the entire city, but it still kind of feel like we are just one entity. This really opens up the conversation, helps me understand how we are really all working together in so many ways for the same things, and all have in our heart that whatever is best for our entire community, which means our kids, is what we're here for. So thank you. I really appreciate having this come together.
I think the city and actually the community in general we've opened up in the last 4 or 5 years, like a whole new dawn on collaboration. And, I think it's really changed with the growth. It's made it necessary because there's just so much going on and so many different people doing different things that sometimes we lose track of each other, right? So I think that we've done a good job as a community and having organizations like C4C and other people help us with those conversations. I think we're in this new era and I think it's just going to get better. So I think our community highly benefits from that. So thanks for, restarting the conversations again. It's not pointing fingers at each other. It's like, what can we do for you? What can you do for us? What can we do better? And I think that's a fantastic thing. So,
and I would say the same coming from my experience in Springfield, where I was on the Department of Recreation District Board. We met monthly with the school district, the city utility, and the city of Springfield in joint meetings to talk about what we were doing, what we were planning, so that we weren't stepping on each other's toes. And also sometimes someone will say, well, wait a minute, I'm gonna run a power line down through there. How about if I run the power line and grade it and move the asphalt on top and have the trail? I mean, those things like that makes the public's money go further. And I think that's what all of us want. And so I'm really pleased. I think when I first came on council, there wasn't quite as much dialogue back and forth between the entities, and there was no real reason for it other than just everybody was busy doing what they were doing. And so we've opened a dialogue with fire, we've opened a dialogue with you, and I think that hopefully you feel very comfortable coming back to us with concerns and situations, so that I'm ready to come and meet with you anytime you want on your side of the street.
All right. I think if that's it, and just want to thank you again for coming and attending online or in person. We really appreciate it because everybody's busy, and thank you for working with our schedule. This go around. Hopefully, maybe we'll get to do one of these when we're settled and coffee or something sometime. So, but yeah, but you know who we are, and we're always happy to talk, and we're collaboratively.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. It's a real pleasure to meet all of you and be able to participate.
Yeah.
And thank you for your service on the school board. I mean, it's thankless sometimes. You get the same amount of pay that we get, and so although I'll double your salary next week. And, it's communities don't run unless people are willing to step up and do the work necessary. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I'll call this meeting to an end, and we will return at 6:30 for the regular city council meeting.